Hello again, everybody. It's the Musers, the podcast, Cowboys edition. It's the football friends, George and Bob, breaking down what we see on the field with the Cowboys in the preseason. The real stuff is just right around the corner. One more preseason game for the Cowboys. And Bob, they got a chance to do something they haven't done since 2006, and that is go undefeated in the preseason after a 34-13 win over the Cardinals this past weekend in Arizona. There's a lot to take out of this game, but if nothing else, we get another week of confirmation of, okay, they look like, as Brian Schottenheimer said this week, a good football team.
They really do. And the entire episode of Football Friends today will in some way, shape, or form be answering the question, are we falling for all of this, or is all of this real? And there's obviously discussions on both sides, Georgie. In fact, if I may, allow me to start with a brief historical answer to the question, does preseason records... No, you know what? I'm going to change the grammar.
Do they matter?
Do preseason records matter? Let's start.
Does preseason records matter?
Okay,
does
so
you think?
Does you think? Shout out to Ali G. I would just say that the answer, despite all of the media world wanting to read meaning into either we got our butts kicked in every preseason game or we did some butt kicking in every preseason game. Unfortunately, through many, many studies, many hardworking Americans trying to figure out the answer to this question, the answer is almost always no, they do not matter at all. Now, there are things inside that matter, but let me just give you 4 pieces of information to help make this point, George. We could go on for a long time, but I think four examples will help you and help America all agree that no, it doesn't really matter. Number 1, may I draw your attention to the 2008 Detroit Lions, famous for being I think the first 0-16 team, right?
Yes.
In NFL history, coached by the great Rod Marinelli. They went 0-16, and you will never guess their preseason record.
Don't tell me they were undefeated.
They were 4-0 in the preseason.
Oh, my.
But wait, there's more. The 2017 Cleveland Browns, which became the second 0-16 team in NFL history, what was their preseason record?
4-0?
4-0.
Oh,
so
no.
So the two winless teams who have gone 0-16. Now I guess you could have to go 0-17. You could be the first team to do that. But those two teams were both 4-0 in the preseason. Now let's flip it around. Do you remember who won the Super Bowl in 2021? They beat the Bengals on their home field for the 2021 Super Bowl.
They beat the Bengals on their home field.
On this team's home field.
Oh, the L.A. Rams.
The L.A. Rams, and their preseason record that year? 0-3. They lost all 3 games. And one more for you, just to pound the point home. Which Super Bowl champion do you think of when I say, whoop, crank up that diesel, whoop, whoop?
The Washington team of 1982.
Oh, you're so good, Georgie. You are so
season.
The 83 Super Bowl in January of 1983. They beat the Dolphins with John Riggins on 4th and 1, breaking a tackle and rumbling, stumbling, bumbling 45 yards for a touchdown. The 82 Washington Red Commanders Skins preseason record before they won the Super Bowl was?
Don't tell me they were 0-4 or 0-6
they were 0-4
back then.
They were 0-4. So just and yes, I am cherry picking to make a very complex study very simple. Yes, the 2 teams that were winless were undefeated in the preseason, and the 2 teams that held the Lombardi Trophy were winless in the preseason, and that's how much preseason records matter by and large.
Well, and I would say on some of those teams that are from way back, like in the 80s or even the aughts, like Detroit, back then, even back in 2008, some teams were guilty of playing starters more than other teams. So you would get a real false indication of what's going on. This has, for the Cowboys, been twos against twos and threes against threes.
Sure.
Which does indicate more depth on this team than we've seen, because we've seen. Well, I tell you what, let's save that for the last segment. How about that?
Yeah.
About what all this means, because I do have some thoughts on why I feel this is different with this team.
Very good. Going back to 2015, I did the Cowboys record over the last 12 preseasons, and it's only going to be 11, George, because in 2020 we had 0 preseason football. Shout out to COVID. Yeah. But in those 12 years since 2015, the Cowboys have made the playoffs 5 times. In those 5 seasons, their preseason record was 4-14, 22% win rate. In the other years, the non-playoff years, so 2015, 2017, 2019, 2024, and 2025, they went 8-10-1. So in years they missed the playoffs, their preseason record is a 42% win rate. And the years they make the playoffs, their preseason record is a 22% win rate. So they are decidedly better win-loss in the years they stink. So I would just say no correlation whatsoever. The 1989 Cowboys, I would love to hear young George Dunham talking to those KRLD microphones about the preseason Jimmy Johnson Dallas Cowboys. And I
believe they were 3-1, weren't they?
3-1, and of course that's 3 times as many wins as they had in the regular season that year. But anyway, it's better to play well than play poorly, I'm sure.
Yes, it is.
But anyway, those are some little pieces of research I thought I would share with the class about what we actually know about preseason football.
Well, the only thing, without looking, 89, as I remember, I want to say the Cowboys beat the Oilers in the final game of the preseason, and I distinctly remember Jerry and Jimmy hugging each other, jumping up and down, running off the field. Like they had, hey, we are on our way. This NFL thing is easy. And then they got hit upside the head 1-15. And they were so bad. They were just awful.
It was a here we go, Jim, and then it didn't go so well, but
not so much.
Yeah, it was a tough go of things, but and yeah, you're right. In preseason, September 1st of 1989, they took on those Houston Oilers, and yeah, then they would open the following week against the New Orleans Saints at the Superdome and take
28-0?
28-0 L. That's exactly right.
How about that? Yeah. And we'll talk about it in the final segment. This does feel different. If nothing else, the eyeball test.
Yep.
Just looking at this team, and we're going to talk about some of these individuals. But when you see the Cowboys roll out 400 yards of offense and not punt, they have guys flying around the field on defense, including this rookie named Barham. Barhammer, as some call him,
like it,
who we'll talk about in a second. And the offense moves up and down the field. And well, why don't we start there with it just the eyeball test, Bob. It just looks like, and I can't remember another preseason like this where I've looked at it and just thought, man, the 2s and 3s are good. It says a lot about the rookie class and some second-year guys like Revel, who's taken a step forward. He had a nice play on Saturday. Just the whole thing, looking at it through the eyeball test, just looks a lot better to me.
Yeah, it does, and it looks incredibly different. That's also very, impressive about this Cowboys defensive rebuild. We still obviously need to see it for like a month against good regular season teams, and that's going to be here before you know it. But just overall, you look at every position on the defense and you're like, wow, this looks different. This looks better. This looks like hope and change, if you will. And the case of Barham is Barham, I guess we're going with instead of Barham,
Yes.
but the case of Barham is really fascinating to me because he's just such a big dude, and you look at the Cowboys at linebacker, and that's always bothered me. And I don't know where you are on this, but in the case of like Overshone and D. Winters, they're both 2.25. It feels like. And 2.25 is fine if we're looking for just speed linebackers. But when you start talking about, well, wait a minute, I'm going to have a light box and I'm only going to have 6 bigs on the field at a time, then can you afford to make 2 of your bigs little? And before long, it's like you got 4 bigs and 7 littles out there if your linebackers are closer to safety, like Marquise Bell was a linebacker like in 2023. And what are we talking about? So in the case of Barham, you're almost flipping it all the way back to over 250. And depending, he's got a very mysterious weigh-in situation where he fluctuates. And I think his pro day was like 243. And I think he's listed in some places at 248. He was measured at 251. And, so somewhere between 240 and 252 is where Barham actually is weight-wise. But if you look at him on the field, he does look like a real physical linebacker who also plays with an attitude of anger and violence. And boy, you saw it Saturday night. Wasn't a ton of snaps, but the snaps you saw a couple TFL splash plays where he not only took on a block, but basically got around it to a point where the guard looked like a matador. And he's the bull running around him, and he went in and seek and destroy that running back. And so it's just a glimpse. But if they got a starting middle linebacker in round 3 at pick 92 for the Osa Odigizua trade, that was the pick they got back. If that guy is on the field like in week 1 playing full-time snaps, we're going to have to ask some crazy questions about what have they been able to do by adding more than just Caleb Downs and Malachi Lawrence to the immediate look of this defense. And that's so exciting. That can make such a difference. And it's just another one where you're like, man, I didn't know this much was possible. So we'll have to see it. We need to qualify everything, Georgie, but Barham, you want to talk about just what the doctor ordered, and we sort of thought on draft day that they got cleaned out at linebacker, and maybe, just maybe, they hit a home run in round 3.
Well, and I agree with all of that, and I think when you combine that with what he has shown in training camp, he got a little banged up, so he didn't play against Seattle, and I think they really wanted to see him on the field. As we've been asking the question about these rookies in the preseason, doggone, after seeing that against the Cardinals, I'm like, hey, wear a hat and don't put on pads on Friday against the Saints. I know he needs some work, but I don't want the Giants to see much more of him until he blitzes with really bad intentions on second or third down midway through the first quarter. I don't think he starts, but I think he's going to play a lot against the Giants. I think he can play teams. And at some point, Bob, I agree. I think he is starting on this defense this year if what we have seen so far is any indication. And again, we get back to sometimes inaccurate, but eyeball test. And man, someone brought up the comp this week of Jalen Smith as far as just look, and just looks
hair?
the part. And I guess the hair matches there too. But man, he looks like a player. And I've talked to a few people about him and said, yeah, wait till you see this kid. He is just, and he's, to my untrained eye, he stood out at training camp. And I think he's really, really interesting. And just the tone of the defense once again to me was guys flying around. You see, and that's maybe a question for after we see the preseason totally played out, but I don't think you're seeing but just the surface level of the Christian Parker defense. But it's enough with movement and different things that Man, I like what I see.
Yeah, and the play style is what we're excited about. And again, go back to linebackers, and I just want to remind people what we saw last year, and we could put in the tape of, maybe I'll do that one of these times. Just kind of compare the linebacker play against Denver in that game up in Vesco or whatever that was. That was just so disheartening because the linebackers were not taking on blocks. They were acting, and I think I actually said this in one of the pieces I was writing, is that just like, dude, Kenneth Murray looks like a punter who is, just trying to almost negotiate a peace treaty with the guy who wants to block him by, hey guys, neither of us get hurt here. Let's just do a little dance. And like, there's just no resistance. There's no battle. There's no edge. Meanwhile, Barham, who somehow slid this far in the draft, partly because Michigan wasn't even playing him at linebacker. They were kind of taking him through the Micah Parsons, are you actually an edge rusher test, which I get it. I mean, edge rusher is very valuable, but I think that's just Barham's like third pitch. I think his best deal is heat seeking, seek and destroy box linebacker who is trying to blow us up. And I think that's very, very valuable. And so we are reviewing Jayshawn Barham's application for dog status, because we're already seeing some really good indicators, George, that he might.
I didn't realize he had applied for that. Okay,
well,
Okay.
Well, the tape is your application, and after seeing the Cardinals' performance, and again contrasting that with what we had to sit through last year, we're very, very close to approving him for lead dog of the linebackers. And then if you can put like Overshown next to him, and then you have like D. Winters as a third and Shamar James, and you're just like, okay, now I'm not over leveraging this. I'm not too small. I've got some, as you said, a real hammer right there in the middle, and then have Overshown chase running backs in coverage if you have to. But I just want Barham behind Quinnen and Kenny as those guys keep him clean, keep those second level blocks off of him so he can go wreck stuff. And that's exciting. Again, it's early. But the idea that we were sitting here saying we didn't get C.J. Allen, we didn't get Jacob Rodriguez, we didn't get all these linebackers, what are we going to do? Oh, we'll patch it together and maybe we'll take one next year. Maybe the Cowboys had a plan, and maybe it was, if this guy's still there at that Odigizua third, we need to grab him, because we think he actually is a run and hit linebacker who will slide because he didn't play run and hit linebacker in 2025. So lots of exciting things. Again, I admit maybe a little ahead of my skis here on whether he can jump right in and be your best linebacker. That's pretty crazy. But I just want to say, when we were at camp, there were a lot of Cowboys brass that were saying, you're not going to believe this guy, because from the second he has arrived at the Star back in April, there's been a buzz about what he's capable of. And it's not obviously of the Caleb Downs level, because that buzz is in the universe. This is more of a localized, let's see if he is what we think he is. But it's exciting, and that changes everything. I don't want to say that too much, but when you want to talk about pivotal pieces on this defense that could take this from, a hope and a prayer to, whoa, we got something here, I think Jayshawn Barham might be the pick to click.
Boy, he may be. And you mentioned something really interesting there about, playing inside at Michigan and also playing out on the edge. And it did make me think, and you mentioned Micah Parsons, what if, and maybe they don't even wait for guys to, not give them a really good performance on the edge. I wonder if it's already in there. We just really haven't seen him and putting him on the edge just because it's an option.
Oh, yeah.
And we didn't think anything about that with Michael Parsons when he got here, and all of a sudden he's out there and, dang, look at him out on the edge. And I think he would be a problem for tackles. I really do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. What you're talking about is a club in your bag, not the entire bag. And so with Barham as an edge rusher at Michigan, he was good, interesting. But I don't think he was wow, this is a star on Sundays. So, I mean, that's what you want to be, though, is you have versatility, have utility, where on third down, whoa, what's Barham doing over there on the edge? Well, he knows what he's doing. And you know, in small doses, I think that can be really effective. The Micah thing is such an outlier freak of nature situation, and that goes all the way back to what DeMarcus Lawrence got hurt and they had no edges, and it was like his first
desperation
pro game
move against the Chargers.
The Chargers out there at SoFi, and we're just like, whoa, what the heck is the plan here? And Dan Quinn had a plan all along, and really maybe that's the consistent tie, is that you need a coach with a real vision of what's possible and then go carry it out. So it certainly gives them some real wiggle room at this position that I didn't know they had. And I was just going through the 53 this morning and trying to see how this roster fits. And let me tell you, having a rookie potential Mike linebacker kind of fall from the sky on August 22nd for a lot of us who, because he was injured, we just haven't seen it. And of course, at practice, you're not going to have a middle linebacker lighting people up very often. But what we saw on Saturday night definitely got me on the edge of my seat.
Well, and you also had an offensive performance that did not feature a punt. I don't think they've ever done that in preseason before. Not that I can remember. Usually you're trying to see what the backup punter can do at some point in a preseason game.
Yeah.
But the Cowboys offense moved up and down the field. They looked good at a number of positions, including quarterback. And let's go there next. Let's talk about Joe Milton III, who turned in quite a performance on Saturday, and what the running back rotation may look like when the real stuff starts, coming up next on the Musers, the podcast, Cowboys edition. So not to just boil down a preseason game to one play, Bob, but I do want to highlight one play that happened in the first half when Joe Milton was playing quarterback. He got the start this week. Sam Howell came in the second half, and the Cowboy offense really put up some productive numbers in that first half. Now, one, you could say, okay, it's the same Milton because he missed a pass on 4th and short. He put it on him. I believe it was the tight end Kuntz, was it not? That was a little high throw and he couldn't bring it down, so they didn't score. But then later in the first quarter, the Cowboys score on a Milton buy myself a little bit of time and find Malik Davis in the flat, and Davis turns the corner and scores. And I love what Schottenheimer said about it this week, paraphrasing, but basically he said, if this was last year, he probably would have bounced that off of Davis's helmet and we would have gone to the next down.
Yeah.
That play just right there, it shows that's just a little pass. It was, but it shows the progression of a player. We've seen it time after time in preseason games and now in practice. Throws that last year he did not make, he's making this year. Crossing routes, touch passes to the corner of the end zone, or in this case, just a little flip on the run to Davis, and it goes for a touchdown. Joe Milton is an improved quarterback, Bob.
Very much so. So honestly, in March when they signed Sam Howell, I kind of thought it was done and dusted. Not that they were trying to push Milton, but they were trying to upgrade from Milton. And, who can blame them? There was not a ton in the 25 preseason or even in those small looks in the regular season where you're just like, man, lock it in. Joe Milton's QB2. Now, after these 2 preseason games where I think Milton looked really decent in Seattle and then, frankly, spectacular against Arizona. I mean, That has to be amongst the best football he's ever played. Where now I'm wondering about Sam Howell again, and I'm wondering, is that decision made, or is it still, let's see who plays well against the Saints on Friday night before we decide this thing? And George, that's crazy to me. Now, I kind of want to hear where you're at on this, but I do want to tell people about the contracts real fast. Sam Howell signed a 1-year deal for $2.5 million, but it's fully guaranteed. So when they don't save money by going with Milton. Sam Howell's got his money either way. You can cut him. He still gets $2.5 million. Whereas Joe Milton has this year and next year as part of his rookie contract at even combined less than the Sam Howell money for just this season. So if you want to say money-wise, you've already promised Howell his money to get him to sign. So maybe that's not super compelling. But the idea that Milton is on your roster in 27 as well, if you want him to be, maybe that's the debate. And then you just want a guy who you believe makes good decisions and can really be there if you're going to lose Dak for, let's say, a game and a half. Let's say Dak gets hurt early in the third quarter and then is in the concussion protocol and has to miss all of next week too. Do you think Joe Milton can help you get a win or two, or Sam Howell can better? And, it's a complicated discussion, but at the end, we just want the best guy for the job because the money is not substantially different. So where are you on this now?
I have gone to the point of Joe Milton is my backup quarterback, and I think my roster has so many tough spots on it that I waive Sam Howell. It seems incongruent to signing a guy to a guaranteed $2.5 million contract, but I think there's a decent chance he makes it through waivers, so you can put him back on your practice squad. And I think because of so many, do we keep 6 receivers? Do we keep 5 running backs? Do we keep 6? Whatever that number is. How many offensive linemen do you keep? You keep 9 or 10? Because you have so many tough decisions there, I only keep 2 quarterbacks, and I think Milton can get me through a few games. And if it's a long-term deal, well, the season's shot anyway, and we go on from there. But I think that's where I'm leaning, and it's not just because of Saturday. It's because of I was excited about Milton last year, and then he proceeds to go out in that preseason and look like he'd never seen a football before. And I think it's because he's working on so many things. I think Shotty had his head spinning last preseason. I couldn't really figure out what was going on, but I think that's a dude who's worked hard on his throwing motion, his footwork, and he has even said that himself, saying, I feel like a different guy this year, and I believe it.
Yeah, 2 of his best plays were basically stepping up and then sliding left and then kind of throwing it maybe across his body a little bit. These are not easy throws. You mentioned the Malik Davis touchdown, but even the better one was that Camden Brown sort of sandlot improv play where the play breaks down, and before long Camden Brown is off to the races again for like 70 yards down to the 1. And
there goes that man again, Bob. That Camden Brown. Yeah,
he's on my team, by the way. My 53 has Camden Brown. There's no doubt about it. But Joe Milton, I do think, and I feel like you hit on this a little bit, I think it speaks to the quality of this coaching staff and this organization to basically year to year look at Joe Milton and say, okay, he was not playing video games over the last 12 months. He was working on his craft and getting better. And I think that is a real credit to the football department, whatever that means, and saying, okay, we got a couple projects, guys, and they won't affect our 2025 team, but they might affect our 26 and 27 if we do this right. And even if you want to take the scenic route back to some of these offensive linemen who are not sure about, the same thing goes for them, where and forgive me on our, is it Shiyazh Pete?
Shiyazh.
I'm sorry.
Shiyazh Pete. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope he gets good enough that I have his name down pat, because that's a real threshold hurdle. But I do think whether it's Drew Shelton or our friend Mr. Pete or heck, Nate Thomas, you go down this list, you want that year-to-year growth with those guys as well, where you're like, I don't want to put them on the field this year, but maybe there's a time where things click and guys work and get better. And I just think Milton is a great story. I don't know if he's going to get this QB2 job, because I imagine there's a lot of voices in the room that value the 20 starts Sam Howell has made at the NFL level, and just say, I trust that more. And honestly, there's a real case to be made that they wouldn't be wrong. But I think Milton, I mean, dude, that throw to Mingo, the seam shot to Kuntz, where he got lit up and didn't catch the ball, but it was a automatic first down. But that seam ball was perfect, absolutely perfect. That's something Dak has always specialized in, is hitting those tight ends 20 yards down the hashes. And I just thought overall Milton was as good as I've ever seen, and I would really hate to see him get out of here. I would, because I do think he would be claimed, and especially with another year on his rookie deal, somebody would like that. And I just think the Cowboys have done enough work on him that they should be the team that reaps the benefits, in my opinion.
Well, you talked about before we talk about running back, which is another big key for this offense. There was another guy who was such a feel-good story on Saturday, and I mentioned this week on the ticket. I've never seen such an emotional moment, and I'm sure they've happened with different players but it's not as if it's a running back or receiver. This is an offensive lineman, and Shiyazh Pete, who's undrafted free agent out of Kentucky, played 1 year out of Kentucky, transferred in there. So he's played in the SEC. He's another guy that you at least noticed in training camp, if nothing else, because he's 6'9", and you're like, man, who's that big dude out there?
He's big.
And he is, by all accounts, the first Navajo player to ever jump on the field in an NFL game. He's listed as the third-string right guard right now for the Cowboys, so probably won't make the team, hoping that maybe he's a practice squad guy. But here's all these fans from the Navajo Nation, and Arizona is already a hotbed for Cowboy fans. And here is all these folks having a great time Saturday, and they are standing and cheering and saying his name. And one really cool thing, did you notice how his teammates, Pete's teammates, all the other Cowboys, as they were chanting his name, they all got away from him on the bench and let him just stand there by himself and hold his helmet up. And it was just, man, it's preseason, but man, that's what's great about sports. That was what a moment for him. And then this moment in the locker room afterwards where Shotty lets him, break the team down, and then he has, I'm going to call it the greatest player speech after a preseason game in the history of the NFL.
I saw something I've never seen before. 25 years in the NFL. An entire section cheering for one man. And that man's going to break us down.
Well, that was an incredible win. I am very fortunate to be amongst you and to play in the same field where the same star hold it on our chest. And I'm proud of us. I'm proud of how far we've come. Man, this game, fate brought us here as strangers, but this game, this star, this team will make us brothers. Yes, sir.
And on the Cowboys go to the Super Bowl after their big win I mean, I'm not going to say anything that's negative. I just think that was, call me goofy. It makes me tear up.
Yeah.
It's just, God, that's everything about sports that's great. And is it, Bob, another indication of this team? Hey, they're going to celebrate the third string guard on this team, and everyone that I don't know. It's weird.
It got me thinking, Georgie, about the Brian Schottenheimer introductory press conference, January of 2025, where the things going through my head then when they named him coach were mostly parallels to like Dave Campo, where you're just like, man, there's no way this is going to work. And
why did they do this?
They hired who? And why? Who thought this was a good idea? And it felt like a very Cowboys move. And then Brian Schottenheimer is asked, I think by Jane Slater, the question of, what sort of legacy are you looking to leave, or how would you like, how do you envision this? Or I forget what her question was, but he said two things. I want to be a champion here. So I want to lead this team to a Super Bowl win. And second, I want to build one of the best cultures in sports history here. And honestly, when the second one felt crazier than the first one when I was listening to it, right? Like, okay.
Yeah, I know. It's like, okay, coach.
Everyone
great,
says I want to
plan.
be a Super Bowl champion. Okay, whatever. You want to do what? And how would we even know if you built the second or one of the best cultures in sports history? Not even NFL history, George. That's not lofty enough. Let's throw in every sport that exists and every culture in every room. And for that to even be on his radar, for that answer, says something about him that I'm not even sure what that is, but it says that he's thinking about that. And then when you see moments like Saturday night or training camps like we were just at, where it does feel pretty compelling that the Cowboys have fixed their culture. Again, I can hear people rolling their eyes when they hear me say this, but it feels like they have just had an off season that is free of drama. And it could have been dramatic, but their head coach basically is, communicating directly with George Pickens to make sure that, hey, man, I just want you to know we want to be upfront with you. Here's what we're doing. And then they prioritize Quinnen Williams. And this Navajo story is an interesting one, but they didn't just sort of minimize his visibility because he's probably going to get cut. And I don't mean to spoil the story, but he's going to get cut. He's not good enough to play at the NFL level now, but he is good enough to develop on your practice squad because he's a big man and he seems to be somebody that everybody really enjoys his company. And if you want to put a project out there, that's a great one. And I'm sure there might even be some marketing benefits, but whatever the case may be, I can see the culture vision happening, and maybe that is sort of behind the Micah Parsons exit. Not to go head back there again,
No
but
doubt.
There's enough things happening here where you're like, doggone. I think Brian Schottenheimer made that an objective. It didn't happen by accident, and is actually carrying that out. And I think that's exciting.
I do too. And that's part of coaching is you lift up your players. And sometimes it's your star player that you lift up in front of the team. But sometimes it is the guy who is the third string guard. Shotty didn't have to do that after the game.
Right.
And maybe he saw an opportunity of, hey, this will be a great marketing moment or whatever. I think Shotty thinks that way sometimes of how things, the perception of, himself and his coaching image. But again, I think some coaches would have said, hey, how about Joe Milton? Let's put him up here. Let him break down the team. But he chose Pete, and it obviously meant the world to him. And I just love what he said is,
Yep.
Fate brought us here, but this game will make us brothers. I was like, golly, man.
Yeah.
I think I could play one play. Just put me in there for one play. That's if I'm on that team, man, that fires me up. That makes me want to go to work the next day. That makes me want to do a little extra film study. That brings new meaning to the sprint I run at the end of practice and everything. It's just, I don't know. It's a little thing, but it's a big thing. And that's how you build a culture, is just a combination of how do you do business? How do you conduct yourself as a team, as a teammate, as a coach? And loved it. Just loved it. And I've never thought that about a preseason post-game speech before.
Well, I remember, and this is a left turn for you, but perhaps you'll allow a nice left turn here to end this discussion, which is when I got to Liberty, they had a big man from Nigeria, a 7'1" big man by the name of Julius Nwasu, and he was a shot blocking, lob catching, dunking, just forcing the paint. And I remember, like, man, this is crazy how good this guy is. Like, am I looking at the next Hakeem Olajuwon or something crazy, right? because certainly all 7'1" guys from anywhere in Africa are probably the next big thing. And I remember asking one of the assistant coaches about him, and the guy says, kind of makes you wonder if there are any more of these guys in Nigeria kicking around that we should be finding for recruiting. And that's always stuck with me. And I thought about that Saturday night. Are there, with all due respect, Mr. Pete, are there any other 6'9", 310-pound Navajos that we don't know about? Because that feels like an outlier amongst that ethnicity. Not that I've done a lot of research on the front, but there are certain groupings of humans in our universe that produce very large humans, and others that don't. And I wasn't familiar with that game. So just a left turn there about man. I had no idea. I'd like to see how big the parents are, just to see what produces the tallest offensive lineman and tallest Dallas Cowboy right now is this oddity that we've never seen in the NFL before. So it's interesting.
No, it is. And I haven't broken down. What did he play? 7 play? I don't know. He played
6 plays.
6 plays.
Yeah.
And
I think all of them are runs, maybe.
Yeah, including the Phil Maffa reverse field touchdown. And looking at that play, it looked pretty good to me. I don't know.
Well,
he was able to move his body, and
he was pulling, but
he looks like he needs to go to the weight room for an NFL lineman. He's got to build some bulk and things like that. He probably needs to be like 330.
Yeah, you know what? He moves okay. Unfortunately, when you're 6'9", those moving targets as you're trying to hit a linebacker in space or anything like that, it gets very, very difficult. So there's a couple times where he's lungy, and I don't want to be super critical of a great story. So I will say there's probably work to be done. But on the Maffa touchdown, I actually think that that was like a G power play to the right, where both guards are pulling and then Maffa's supposed to follow them. And I think one or both of the guards might have lost in their effort to get a block, that Maffa just stopped and said, you know what? I'm going to go the completely other direction. And he ran for a touchdown on sort of I believe a made-up improv of what that play was supposed to be. But take a look at it and see what you think. But I kind of think they planned on following Pete into the right, and then Maffa's like, yeah, I like this direction over here, and he turned it into a touchdown.
Well, speaking of the running backs, we got to see some really good performances. I would say it's the best we have seen Jaden Blue look, but again, go back to training camp, and that was one of I remember our observations was every time you look on the field, Jaden Blue is running down the sideline, and that included in some of their scrimmage work. He had some really good plays. He did have a fumble against the Rams, but He looked good, but I'll say this, and I've been saying it for a couple of weeks. I think Blue gives them their best opportunity for a changeup and maybe a home run hitter
Yep.
behind Javonte Williams. But I think when they start the season, Malik Davis will be the backup running back. Not to say Blue won't get on the field, but I think Davis has earned that. They know his value on special teams, and, man, I love the way Davis hits it up in there. He's really solid.
Yeah, he is. And he's also, brave in terms of he doesn't care how big you are. If you're blitzing the quarterback, he's going to try to get in front of you and give you everything he's got. And that's what those smaller running backs have to do. It's such a difficult job, man. I can't tell you how painful it is to blitz pickup, because not only are you giving up 20, 30 pounds to a lot of these guys. I mean, heck, what is Malik Davis? What is he, 200? 205? Okay, let's say Jayshon Barham is blitzing him, and we just said he's 250. So you're giving up 50 pounds. Now, let's just talk about the science of 250 full sprint, 200 stationary trying to stop him. Yeah. I'm sorry, man. If
it doesn't match up well.
Yeah, if a car and an SUV are in a head-on collision, but the SUV is going 50 miles an hour and the car is just sitting there, bad things. And so it hurts. You got to be courageous. You've got to not care about your own well-being. You're trying to help your team execute a play, and you're willing to give yourself up for the cause, and that's what the job is. And anyway, I say all that to say Malik Davis is that dude. He's that guy who understands that tomorrow is not promised him on an NFL roster, so he plays every day like it's his last one. And I love that about him, and I know you do too. Yeah. And so, that's the type of guy that basically dares you to find somebody to take his job, and then takes it personally and goes out there and says, nope, that guy can't take my job either. Nope, not that guy either. Someday they're going to find somebody who's better than Malik Davis, who's just bigger and stronger and can take his job. But I admire the guy who stubbornly says, bring it on, I'll take them all on. And that feels like Malik Davis. And again, they feel like they're building a roster of these guys who are just physically and mentally willing to take whatever challenge you throw at them. And I know that's the sport, and I know that's this league, but there have been times where the Cowboys have been accused of country clubbing their way through things a little bit. And I feel like he's another example of how it feels like it's a different style of Cowboy football right now. Yeah. They find those guys and they reward them at times, and I like that.
So your depth chart at running back is Javonte Williams. We think Malik Davis.
Yeah.
Jaden Blue, and I think he'll get on the field. I think Blue's taking a step forward this year. He seems like year two makes a difference with a lot of guys, and I think he fits into that category. Hunter Lipke is a running back / fullback, but he will be on this team.
Yep. Those are my four.
You're not keeping Phil Maffa.
I feel like Maffa is a guy I can pretty easily slide through. So
you make it through? Okay.
I do. I just can't keep five, I don't think. I was doing the math, and I don't want to get too lost in the weeds here. Maybe we do it on next week's show once we do know the final roster. But I've got two quarterbacks, and then from there I've got four running backs with Lipke. Just three tight ends. I got to try to slide Michael Trigg through. I can't find a spot for him. I'm going 6 wide receivers.
Okay.
I haven't done that in years. The Cowboys usually keep 5. I really, it's down to Camden Brown and Jonathan Mingo, and I kind of think I want to keep both of them. And then 9 offensive linemen. But honestly, I think I only have 6 that I like, and so I'll be watching the waiver wire pretty closely to see if there's any upgrades out there.
Okay. I like that. Yeah, I don't see them keeping more than 3 tight ends with, trying to get both DJ Rogers and Trigg through. I think both of them may have a future in the NFL at tight end. I like the way you think, Bob, and that goes back to our original discussion about quarterbacks. I think you keep 2 just because you have some really valuable guys that you're going to need at running back, maybe, certainly in the offensive line. We haven't got to the defensive side yet, and some really tough decisions to make there. So, I like the way you think on that. And I think, once again, at year 2 of the system, just about everybody back on offense. I really think this offense, and we haven't even seen the guys who start yet, really.
Right.
So you get them in there, and they've had some work in scrimmages, and Dak is, to another point in his career. I really think this offense is going to be lights out. I really do.
Yeah, there's a couple things they got to do better than last year. They got to cash in those red zone chances a little more, but overall, I think we're in complete agreement. The offense should not be the issue this year. It will be dependent on whether this defense can quickly become not just okay, but even a little better than that, and that's it's all going to be very intriguing.
Yes. All right. As we get closer to the end of the preseason, Bob and I taking the cheese once again. Let's talk about that next. Cowboys with one more preseason game this week against the Saints. And I guess we have a score to settle here, Bob, because all they did was fight when they practiced out in Oxnard. So even so much that the NFL issued some fines out because there were so many ridiculous fights in that practice. And then it's on to cutting your roster to 53 and having a couple of weeks to get ready for your opener against the New York Giants. So we have talked glowingly about so many things about this team since we started back in California a few weeks ago, and we've already heard from several people, gosh, you guys bang the Cowboys drum every year and you want us to follow, and I guess that's true. I think we discuss, hey, watch out for this guy. He may turn out to be a player. This DeMarvion Overshone, who the Cowboys think really highly of. He looks like he may be a dude. Hey, a few years back, the Cowboys drafted Micah Parsons. Wait till you see this guy on the field. I think he's really going to be something. Some of those things work out individually. Team-wise, it hasn't worked out very well for this team in the last 30 years. And although Mike McCarthy had 3 straight 12-win seasons, he also met the similar fate in the postseason. So I understand why this fan base is very gun-shy, why any sort of preseason hype, they just kind of hold up their hand and say, stop. I don't want to hear it. Just let me see something, not only during the regular season, but even if this team gets off to a good start in a regular season, we're going to hear that kind of stuff as, all right, we'll wait till January. And
yes, they
have every right to say that. I will just say this. I have said a lot of good things about this team because even in a 7-win season last year, I saw a lot of really good things in this team from the coaching staff, the offense. Defense was an absolute train wreck, but maybe that's what has me so optimistic about this year. I do think it's going to be a much better defense given what they've done in personnel and everything. And I'm going to get back to the guy we spent some time talking about because he called up a third-string offensive guard because of the way he treats players, because of the way he talks every day, because I think there is an expectation of, hey, we're in this for championships. We're in this to be a good teammate. This is who we are. And I think who they are is a good team. And I do think that this looks like a different team to me than, I don't know how far back you go. I had some pretty good feelings about some teams back in the aughts. Parcells last year in 2006, and that same team next year had the best record in the NFC. So there's been some years scattered in here where I felt good about it. But in let's say recent history, last 8 years or so, I feel different about this team.
Yeah, same. And I do think we are probably football friends enough to both admit that we do skew on the side of optimistic, and that is without apology. You can just say, "Are we born this way?" Whatever. I will say that even in a bad year, I probably do see a mediocre ceiling, but I see a ceiling that's higher than a lot of our colleagues at the station, who do seem to skew a little pessimistic or negative. And again, I'm not saying they don't have their reasons, and I'm also not saying that 30 years in the wilderness, that's not a very reasonable and normal outcome for a lot of people. Is that they've just had it. They cannot have their heart broken again, and so now we're in a phase where expectations are almost mocked, and optimism is certainly shouted down, because why do you guys fall for this? Well, the pushback would be, I think, in the last 2 years, 24 especially, and 25, we entered the season not pushing any sunshine. I'm sorry. There was no... definitely from me, the 24 team, they should have fired Mike McCarthy the second that playoff game ended. And when they elected not to, they did even a worse thing, which is let it die on the vine without any support. And they neither committed to him nor did they fire him. And so this middle road nonsense was a disaster, and we knew it would be. And then last year, they had at least a snowball's chance of optimism with Schottenheimer, and then they took their best player and sort of botched all of training camp by making that a circus, and then traded him at the end for no immediate help to speak of. And so they have honestly been guilty of self-sabotage these last 2 seasons, and kind of got exactly what they asked for, which was 2 7-win seasons. This year, to accuse us of doing this every year after those 2 years is just making things up. So I appreciate the comedy of our loyal listeners, imagining our optimism the last 2 years, but I'm sorry, that wasn't there. It wasn't there, and there's actual proof out there if you'd like. Now, in fairness, I did bet the over last year, George. But that was only 7.5 wins. I think you could say they're not going to be very good, and they could still win 7.5, and of course they didn't. But
all you needed was one play, Bob. All you needed was one play against the Packers, and that's an 8-win team.
Well, and I never made that bet after the Micah trade. That bet was made back in April when I first saw the 7.5 win line. I'm like, this is free money. Kids, there's no free money in Las Vegas.
No.
My dad tried to tell me over the course of many years. But anyway, no, look, there are good vibes here. There are good football players here. Do they have questions? Of course, everybody does. This is also a product of looking at the NFC and seeing a lot of flawed teams and opportunity. And so what are we saying? Are we saying this team's going to win the Super Bowl? George has put them in the Super Bowl, which is very lofty.
Win it. I just said they'd get there.
I'm going to stop at this is just a playoff team and an NFC contender. I don't know what that means. That's very vague. But I look, George and I agree on the simple thing that sports are a little more fun if you're not farting all over everything. If you're willing to at least imagine the possibility of fun times. Like, why else would you even care about sports if you just thought it was only a term for misery? Like, at least allow yourself to imagine, what if things start clicking, and what if all of these guys aren't complete buffoons? So look, maybe we're optimistic. Fine. Sue us, but it's football season. We're happy football's back, and we're happy the Cowboys don't look completely clueless this year, and maybe this will be a fun year.
I think I know good when I see good, bad when I see bad. But am I an optimistic person? I would say yes, and I'll give you 2 reasons. One, we've already talked about on this podcast, because of a guy named Roger Staubach. He made me see the game of football and life differently, that hey, maybe there is a chance that this could happen, or this good thing could happen. That's number one. Number two, the medium that we have been in, and now we're in the podcast world, Bob, we're multimedia, and you're triple multimedia. You're a writer as well.
Barely.
And this is going to knock your socks off, and it's probably going to give us a couple of angry emails, but you know what? I don't give a shit. Okay, listen to me.
Yeah.
I've been in this business for a long time. I've been in it since the 80s. You remember the 80s, Bob?
Barely.
That was a long time ago. It was Depeche Mode and all these,
Dukes of
U2,
Hazzard.
The Alarm, the whole thing. And one thing that I've noticed in our world of sports talk radio is that, and we've even been told this through the years, hey man, negative sells. If you're negative and you bring up everything, and then I do agree with that. And it's fun sometimes to sit and just kick a team when they're down, and even when they're mediocre, and even when they're good. Yeah, they're not that good though, because look at this, and look how ridiculous this is. But I will say this, one thing that has driven me crazy in radio, and one thing that I think sucks in radio, are the shows that go on and let's just say they talk politics, and they only give you one side, and they give you that side every flippin' day. Mm-hmm. Like there's no yin and yang. There's no, yeah, that's true. He had this policy, but I will give him this. He seems to be a good human, and I think he wants the best interest of the United States moving forward. If every day or every podcast we came on and said, Jerry Jones doesn't want the Cowboys to win, and he wants you to be miserable. Let me tell you the same thing every flippin' day. I'm sorry, I can't do that. And I think if there's been some times when all I've heard is this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, and this sucks, sometimes I feel the need to say, that's true. Everything you said about dysfunctional franchise and corporate order and everything in football operations with this team, true. But you know what? Camden Brown's pretty good, and he's an interesting player. And Jayshon Barham is an interesting player. And I'm sorry, I can't do negative every day and just tell you that it's never going to work for a Jerry Jones-led team. There may be something to that, and I may be proven wrong on that. And maybe this team doesn't get back to the promised land until there's an eternal flame out there at AT&T Stadium. Maybe that is right, but I still think with the right guy in place and Schottenheimer, I have a lot of faith in him. And I've already seen some really good things in him, but a lot of it is maybe I seem like an optimistic and a guy who's eating the cheese because I'm sorry, I refuse just to give you the same take every day of this sucks and it's never going to be good. I can't do that.
No, and what's really interesting about all of this is I think it's easier to be negative about any team, but this one in particular, if you don't sort of get a feel for the type of people that the organization employs. And so I know to Stephen A. Smith, the Dallas Cowboys are just Jerry Jones. But to those of us who live here and work, covering the team, you do recognize that they are constantly bringing people into the organization who are spending every waking hour trying to figure out how to solve this riddle. And when you see that, when you see the tireless work and obsession of like some football lifer's life work is, how do I get the Dallas Cowboys back to being a contender in the NFL? And when you see that, then you're like, oh, okay, so people are working around the clock to figure out how to fix this problem. And I believe personally that this league lends itself to, there will be a year where things click for just about every team because that's the way the league is set up. So that has led me to the conclusion that the Cowboys are going to win it all again. They are going to be great again. I don't know if they're going to, be a dynasty because nobody's assured a dynasty, but those magical years will happen for this team. And I plan on living long enough to see it. Now, I'm not positive I'll be successful in that plan, but let's give it a shot. And, I feel like the longer you work in this business, the more crazy things you see happen, the more unlikely things you see happen, the more things you think were impossible become possible. And it just sort of allows you to dial back your certainty, because the only thing you should be certain of is there is nothing you should be certain of. That's right. The only thing you should be certain of. And so when you say the Cowboys will always screw it up, or Dak will always fall short, or all this thing will always happen, well, then you have not recognized how many times we've all been wrong about any of these things. That's why they play the games, they say. That's why, so I love the fact that every time I enter a season of any sport, I don't know the outcome. If I did know the outcome and we were just doing like pro wrestling or something with scripts and storylines that we're trying to get the people going with, then I would have zero interest in this business. I love the fact that nobody knows what's going to happen on any given Sunday. That's why they say it's any given Sunday. And that's what fuels me, and that's what keeps me optimistic, is this new season is going to share with us things about this team and all the teams that none of us can even imagine. Yeah. And we'll all look back and when we're at the Super Bowl, George, and we'll say, what if you would have told us this in August, that this was going to happen? And we're like, wow, that's crazy. I can't wait to see next season, to see what happens. So that's, I think it fuels us both. I think it makes us football friends. I think it makes us want to do this podcast every week. And yeah, I do think the Cowboys are going to be good this year. So everybody who asks me on the street, do I think they're going to be good this year? Yes, I do. What does that mean? I have no idea. So let's start playing games and find out. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I will say about last year, I'll stand by everything I said last August, except one big thing, the defense. Yes, I was guilty of saying, yeah, I think Eberflus can put something together. Even after they traded Micah, I thought they can patchwork this, and boy, was I wrong. Wrong. I had no idea how bad Kenneth Murray was. I had no idea about their lack of pressure and how bad they would be in communication, and so much so that Shotty had to get over to that side of the ball and go, what are y'all doing? What are we doing over here?
Yeah.
And it was just an awful experience over there. But you know what? Go back and listen to what we said last August about this offense. Hey, I think they're going to be able to run the ball better. I think Clayton Adams knows what he's doing when it comes to running schemes. Yep. And they've got a guy who's run it well before in Javonte Williams. Even I was surprised how well Javonte played last year. That was a pleasant surprise. It was an unknown. But I think some of the things we said about this team offensively came true last year. Hey, what if Pickens just comes in here and plays? Well, he did.
Yeah, he did.
So we got half of it right. It left you a half game short. By the way, I think you hit 7.5. I think a tie ought to count as a half.
Talk to Vegas for me, will you?
I guess not. Yeah,
but you know what? I have this on my Twitter bio. I know you probably don't have the ability right now to read my Twitter bio, but sure. There's one phrase on there that fuels me. And it will well after I retire. Can you see it?
Stand by. Getting to Twitter here just takes an old man a while.
You have to unblock me.
Let me unblock Bob here. I got so doggone mad at him. Let me search Bob Sturm here.
Yeah.
And
that's Sports Sturm. There we are.
Okay, where's Bob?
You can't find
There's
me.
Bob. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Okay, you're a part of Cowboys Rewind at DFW Ticket.
Yeah.
The Hardline 3 to 7.
Okay.
Hashtag Truth Over Tribe.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Hashtag I'm Mr. Brightside.
Okay, but one more.
Hashtag 3 Little Birds.
Okay, no. Now the phrase that pays.
Okay, someday we'll go all the way.
There it is.
There it is.
There's several on there, because I'm Mr. Brightside and 3 Little Birds is probably the exact same thing, the same premise of everything's going to be all right. But the Pearl Jam played at Wrigley Field, and Eddie Vedder is allegedly a Cubs fan, and I don't even know if this is a original, but they played someday we'll go all the way. And that's what it's all about, people.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about is you're going to live till you're 75 if you're lucky, and there's going to be like 3, maybe 5 years where your team is going to make you happy. And I don't know when that's going to happen, but it's going to happen one of these days. And that's what fuels this thing is someday they'll go all the way.
Yeah, I'm with you, Bob. Someday. And maybe that day will happen this year. But, yeah, let's line them up. Let's get one more preseason game out of the way. We'll know what the final roster is. And what do you say we get together and do this again next week, Bob? How about that?
I wouldn't miss it, Georgie. And, yeah, you're right. Maybe we're going to look back in January and we're going to be surrounded by people that said, I knew it. I knew the Cowboys were going to be good. And we're not going to call all of you liars.
No.
We're going to welcome you to our big circus tent of belief that they're going to be pretty good this year. Don't miss it.
I think so, too. And thanks to our producer, Peter Welton, for putting up with this conversation. And I'll leave you with this. I think fate brought us together, but this discussion on this podcast will make us brothers.
Interesting.
How about that?
I would like to counter with one as we one up each other.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, the 2026 Cowboys, I'm a big believer in fate, and I've got a good feeling about this.
Okay, Ben Crenshaw, I am with you. That's actually Bob Sturm. I'm George Dunham, and we will do this next time on The Musers, the podcast, Cowboys edition. Football Friends.